Herzlich willkommen bei Digitale Optimisten. Ich bin Alex und ich spreche in diesem Podcast mit den Gründern der nächsten Generation, die mit ihren Ideen die Zukunft verändern wollen, aber noch ganz am Anfang stehen. Heute mit Teil 2 meines Gesprächs mit Anna von Jupiter. Anna will mit ihrem Startup ein 10-mal besseres Kundenerlebnis beim Online-Kauf von Lebensmitteln bieten. Das heißt 10-mal besser als alles das, was die riesigen Wettbewerber Amazon, Postmates und so weiter bieten. Hier ein Ausschnitt aus dem ersten Teil des Gesprächs.
So at Jupiter, we are automating your grocery shopping. Basically we allow you to what we call put your groceries on autopilot. And what this means is that you sign up to our platform, you let us know about your preferences, and from then on we have an algorithm that builds your shopping cart every week for you and make sure that your deliveries are scheduled for you weekly. So the idea is that after some weeks in the service, you don't even need to check at those shopping carts that we build for you, because the algorithm gets so accurate that you can just live your life knowing that every week you're gonna be receiving deliveries and that will keep you well fed.
Im zweiten Teil, in den Rapid Fire Questions, erzählt sie jetzt, was sie der EU-Kommission raten würde, wie Europa den Kampf um neue Geschäftsmodelle vielleicht doch noch gewinnen kann, was der größte Rückschlag in ihrem Start-up war und wie sie erfolgreiche Geschäftsmodelle identifiziert. Die nächste Folge Digital Optimisten mit frischen Ideen und einem neuen Gründer kommt nächste Woche Montag. Jetzt erstmal viel Spaß mit Anna von Jupiter. Anna, we already spent almost an hour talking about your business. I find it really interesting, this last meter delivery concept, and just basically saying, you know what, we have to make online, well, first off saying online grocery is the future, and then we have to make it much easier. So that's, I think, a great thought that you baked into your product. So I can only say that we now have the last part of our interview ahead of us, which are the rapid fire questions.
Oh, exciting.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. So feel free to answer as long as or as short as you like, but the questions are, can be all over the place.
Okay.
Cool. So my first question is, which book do you gift most to family and friends?
A book that I gift to a lot of female friends, specifically, is a book called Lean In from Sheryl Sandberg. I read this book years ago, and it's about kind of like the role of women in society and in business, and I found it pretty transformational. So I've gifted it to a lot of female friends.
Cool. Yeah, we hadn't had that recommended yet, so I'm happy to link that book. My wife also has the book, and she thinks it's cool. So great recommendation.
And now that I'm thinking, is I've gifted it to female friends, but I think it's also a good read for men as well. Like I should gift it more to my male friends as well.
Yeah, totally. Let's do male empowerment. That's great. And next question. Of course, I went through your Twitter feed. There's not much there, and it's quite abandoned, of course. Well, not of course, but
active,
it's not very active. But some time ago, you tweeted a link to the best commencement speeches ever. And I was wondering, imagine if you would be the commencement speaker at a university. What advice would you give students if you were the one delivering that speech at the graduation ceremony?
Wow, that's a great question. I think kind of like the biggest learning for me, like for example, starting the company. I think that the advice that I would give anyone is to work on becoming a learning machine. And what I mean by that is, I think it's very this ties back to what I said before about yeah, like younger Anna wanting to be like wanting to prepare herself and learn and be ready for something. I think over the years I realized that it's very difficult to operate this way. Like you're never gonna be, you could never completely expect what life or business is gonna put on your way. So I think it's a much better investment rather than investing getting like specific skills, investing in becoming a learning machine, like having like a good learning process for things that yeah, to be able to tackle like challenges that are put in front of you. And with that, something very important is to always focus on progress and not result. Like look always at the percentual numbers and not as at the absolutes. Like yeah, I try to live my life this way. Like rather than looking at the result today, like looking at how much progress I've made today versus yesterday. um yeah, I think that has been my biggest learning over the years.
I love both, especially the learning machine. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool. I mean, one big reason for me doing this podcast is I get to talk to people like you, right, with your experience and your take on life, and it's certainly been a huge learning experience for me. So yeah, plus one to that. I think that's great advice.
Thank
Next
you.
question. We talked a little bit about Spain, Europe, and the US at the beginning of our interview.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you could advise the European Commission on how to build a climate that makes it easier for startups to thrive in Spain or the EU.
Mm.
What would you tell the European Commission?
I think I would start probably the most important thing. Like I think that the biggest challenge that Europe faces as it when it comes to entrepreneurship is cultural. Like I think there needs to be a cultural shift in how like society as a whole thinks about success and failure. So when I think about how to go about this cultural shift, like the first thing that comes to mind is probably role models. I think we don't do a good job in Europe and in Spain at highlighting like the people that has been like that has achieved great things or has had like a big impact in the community through business. So that would be one thing, like making it more of a yeah, making it like enhance the value of the entrepreneur's profession. This is one. And then on the other side also work on how to honor like the people that tried it and maybe weren't successful, like make sure that yeah, like make sure like incentivize just people trying it, and a way to do it is like paying close attention to how do we treat like people that fail, like for example companies. Yeah, a lot of people might be worried about in Europe. I'm sure this happens a lot, like people might be worried about taking 1 year off work to try a new idea because they might feel that then it's going to be very difficult if they fail to find like another job. So yeah, like what, I don't know in which way, like through like a through it's very hard probably through policy to do something like that, but just trying to think how do we deal with failures, and how do we can we honor those failures, or give space for people that have like taking the risk to start something, and understand, yeah, and valuing the learnings that these people has gotten as well.
Next question
Yeah.
is, what is the biggest misconception of being a founder?
Oh yeah, I think like something to me, like something that was very surprising, and it's still surprising today, is that i think I think people underestimate uh, how much of a sales process is to start something. I think like yeah, when people think about founders, especially tech founders, people think about developers, technology, but I think that especially in the early days, it's so much about being able to sell your idea to everyone, like really, like it's selling it to the customer, selling it to the investors if you want to have like a venture backed business, for example. And I think these sales skills are very undervalued, and to me, like even having worked in sales in the past, it was like something that I feel I've learned a lot through this process. I already knew about it, but I had to even learn more because you have nothing. So sometimes what your yeah, like your sales skills is what you, one of the few things that you can rely on, and you definitely need them to start something.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Actually, I thought about that question a while ago with a friend, and
Hmm.
we kind of thought, if we were to start another company at some point, we would probably just test if we could sell just the idea to someone. We wouldn't even have any product at all. We would just try to see, if we can actually convince anyone to sell to buy or to give money for that product that doesn't exist yet, but they don't have to know. So I think
Hmm.
that's actually one of the biggest tests of founding a company and then selling something, or trying to launch something, is can you find a market? And I totally agree with your idea there.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Like that's the first thing that you should do before building any line of writing any line of code. You should try to sell it, and if people want to pay for it, then you would consider building something.
Hmm.
Um, mhm.
I heard of one company. I think what they did is they actually built a website, just a super easy Shopify website, and they just advertised their product there. They took some mock pictures. I don't know how they did the pictures, but
Mhm.
they disabled the I think the shop button, so you could do everything on the site, but you couldn't really buy the product. So that's how they tested it. They just built a mock website, put some photos on there, and advertise it on some
Yeah.
groups and some social media. And they saw, okay, how many people click through to the shop button, and they measured that, and they kind of evaluated how to build a message, how to
Hmm.
So that, I thought that was an interesting concept of kind of an MVP that is more like a market MVP as opposed to like a product MVP.
Correct. Yeah, and I think today, like with the tools that exist, it's super easy to do that. And yeah, like yeah, when I was saying before, like hey, that's the only thing we use Facebook ads for example, at the
Hmm.
beginning of our existence was more just to understand like if this resonated with the market.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you can do that with like a couple of $100. Like you don't need much more.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
Anna, we're almost through. Second to last question. You're doing great in the rapid fire questions.
Okay, cool.
The second to last question is: when was the last time you thought this is a really bad idea with Jupiter? And when was the last time that you thought I'm going to be a billionaire? This is going to be $1 billion company.
That question is so funny because yeah, this I think this describes very well the life of a founder. Like yeah, I think I have a lot of ups and downs. Like some days I feel like wow, this is gonna be it, and we're into such a big thing. And other days I'm like, am I crazy to be doing that? Yeah, I think that's over time. Like at the beginning, it was yeah, I struggled a lot with that, and I think the people around me, especially my partner as well, like because some days I would be super happy, other days I would be like very kind of like doubtful. But now over time I just learned that this is kind of like the norm, and it's gonna be like that. So the days that I'm so very happy, I'm like okay, chill, don't be that happy, and the days that I'm more down, I'm like okay, in a week you're gonna be happy again, so don't worry. Honestly, I think yeah, like once COVID, honestly, when once COVID hit, and kind of looking at the changes like in behavior. I was like when COVID hit, obviously I had been reading about China a lot, because obviously like they went through the same process but earlier. So I was reading about how grocery delivery companies were dealing with that and how they were doing. So like something that I read was that I don't remember the specific numbers, but basically that through COVID, like a lot of people that had never ordered online before had ventured into doing that, and that the retention numbers of those people were very high after COVID evaporated there. So at that moment, I was like, oh wow, like we really entered the market in the right time, because like there has been like this event, external event, like some people call it like a black swan, that has completely accelerated a trend that otherwise would have taken like much longer to yeah, like the adoption would have been longer. So at that time I was like, okay, we are in the right like moment in time with the right product. So on the negative side, there was a moment in which there was like these kind of like semi-famous person that I don't I would prefer not to share the name, but this person like provided like negative feedback on the idea, or just like his position was that this was not gonna like our business was not gonna succeed. And I think yeah, at the time, yeah, especially when yeah, this was quite early on, and I think like yeah, it was very kind of like hearing from someone that has succeeded in his career as an entrepreneur, like hearing that your idea is not good can hurt a lot, and it hurt at the time. But I think um now how I'm thinking about it is, and this is like this idea is not mine, but basically like they're like the most valuable businesses are built in those spaces where there's non-consensus about something. So yeah, if there's consensus, there's not like valuable business to be built, because it's probably already built. Like it has already been proven that something will be valuable. But isn't just in those things in which like very smart people are taking different positions, like they have like different ideas about whether something is going to succeed or not, is where there's opportunity. And yeah, like the most valuable businesses are built in the intersection of non-consensus and being right, like taking the right side of the non-consensus. So I just like something that was at the time like a bit motivating. Over time it became like more kind of like motivating in the sense that okay, yeah, I mean this person is super smart and has said this, but I also know other people that are very smart that really believe in our product. So yeah, like we are at a place in which if we are right, like this is going to be very valuable. So yeah, that was a big learning for me.
That's an inspiring advice. Or what's the negative? What's the opposite of advice? I don't know. It turned out to be advice at some point.
Yeah.
Actually, that really relates to my last question. So I'm not sure if you've already answered it, but my last
Mhm.
question traditionally on this podcast is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I mean, normally I would have talked about the like for me, like yeah, the thing that is the best advice, and it was from one of my classes at Stanford, was this non-consent, like this 2 by 2 metrics of consensus, non-consensus, right and wrong, and just like aiming always for being in the non-consensus square and hopefully be right. But I think another good advice that I got was when I was through YC, Y Combinator, like the accelerator, was that at the end, like the like most of startups failed, right? So once you set on, yeah, once you set on a journey to start a company, like the most likely outcome is that this company is not going to succeed, just like as a matter of probabilities. Um, but then, like what this means is that everything that you do, like all the decisions that you take, should since day one be about the risking and kind of like moving this percentage, like maybe like your likelihood of success is 1% when you start, but like trying to increase this likelihood over time. And there are like certain things that are depend like, that you can control. You can do certain things to the risk, your situation. Like one, for example, that they always share at Y Combinator is equity split between founders. Like, for example, in our case, we're 4 founders and we are all equal founders. And one of the reasons to do that is because we know that a lot of, like, one of the common reasons for failure in startups is fights among co-founders, and sometimes these fights come from different equity splits. So a very easy thing to do to de-risk your business is just like be equal founders. But yeah, this is just an example. But there are a lot of other things, like which things you decide to test first in your business. Like, so you start with the biggest risks that you need to prove wrong to continue, and that's like something that is in my mind. Like, how can we keep the risk in that? Like, for example, which investors do you choose? There are a lot of things that most of the things you won't be able to control, but for the ones that you can control, always take the decision that the risk your company.
That's some inspiring stuff, Anna. I can
Mhm.
tell you, I learned a bunch, not only from the last 15 minutes where you shared some insights from the Y Combinator program and your approach to founding and running a company, but also during the whole time when we talked about your journey, your background of coming from a family of entrepreneurs in Barcelona and coming to Stanford and building your companies there and running Jupiter with, I think, a really novel value proposition. So all I can do now at the end of our interview is to say thank you so much for coming on and all the best for Jupiter and yourself.
Thank you so much for your time and your questions. I had a great time. Yeah, I loved your questions. It made me think about stuff that that sometimes I don't ask myself. So it was also like really, really like really nice for me to be in this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, that's just because I read your Twitter feed, I guess.
Oh yeah, you got a lot of information from that feed.
So, das war der zweite Teil meines Interviews mit Anna von Jupiter. Nächste Woche geht's weiter mit frischen Ideen und einem neuen Gründer. Vorher möchte ich dir noch einen Podcast empfehlen, den ich wirklich persönlich sehr schätze. Er ist von Christian Bützer. Christian ist einer der Co-Founder vom Online-Marketing Rockstars, lebt schon seit über 7 Jahren im Valley und interviewt in seinem Podcast Deutsche, die im Valley ganz schön viel bewegt haben oder vielleicht auch noch auf dem Weg dahin sind. In der aktuellen Folge interviewt er unter anderem einer der Gründer von LinkedIn, der ein Deutscher ist. Das wusste ich auch nicht. Also schaut es euch an. Der Podcast heißt OMR Silicon Valley Update und ist wärmstens empfohlen. Viel Spaß dabei und bis zur nächsten Woche bei Digitale Optimisten.